Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and of course that old 4chan is down, but don't expect this channel to just be the 4chan update, okay? Trust me. When it's back, it'll be back, but this gave me a good time to sort of dig through my entire, Rolodex of video ideas that I was putting together, and I kind of wanted to, basically look through, effectively, some of the creepier threads on this website, just to basically show you guys the entire range of goofy to actually illegal stuff we'll be looking at in this video, okay? Videos where we'll be looking at something harmless all the way up to an actual, honest to God, killer found on the actual platform. Indeed, wild stuff. So of course, 4chan's sort of like this mystery place that people always consider to be like the final god of the internet, where like some of the most true evil comes out of. And that's actually so far from the truth. Like if you ever want to see true evil, you probably are best spent putting your time towards, I don't know, something like DeviantArt or whatever, right? Like, it is what it is. But ladies and gentlemen, to give you an idea about it, some of the goofier stuff that always comes out of 4chan starts off with them basically putting hoaxes onto the entire internet. Now, to give you an idea, all right, to show you some of the more harmless stuff that, 4chan does, is social media manipulation, okay? And in this kind of social media manipulation, it starts off pretty simple from things like Wave, Apple Wave, for instance. If you don't remember this, back in like 2014, there were a couple 4chan users going, all right, boys, we got to come up with some cool stuff for that new iOS release, right? And of course, there were people throwing in some cool ideas like an erotic mode. Scratch resistant, solar charging. But one user comes with microwave charging. So again, this is kind of build off of like how phones have like wireless charging, but what if you could throw your iPhone in at 5% into a microwave, put the microwave on for like 2 minutes and get a full charge? That's not how it really works, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, if anything, it'll probably fuck up most electronics that go into anything. Like a microwave. But anyways, a few hours later, 4chan users decided to create this infographic, which kind of resembled Apple, marketing materials. So they had Wave, for instance, right? I mean, they got a whole cute, icon for it and everything, all right? Wave is our latest and greatest addition to iOS 8. Wave allows your device to be charged wirelessly through microwave frequencies. Wave can be used to quickly charge your device's battery using any standard household microwave. Now, of course, if you were dumb enough to think, wow, my software update simply enabled this hardware, change onto my device, well, I think you might actually deserve what's happening to you, okay? But they basically came up with some bullshit like iOS 8 contains new drivers that interface with your device's radio baseband, allowing it to synchronize with the microwave frequencies. So, of course, eventually a few of the users here went to the old B forum, right? Which is random on 4chan. And they were like, all right, boys, we got a mission. We got to spam social media with information about new microwave charging capabilities. And it comes standard with iOS, yada, yada, yada. So immediately, B's just like, all right, we got it. I mean, they even had cute hashtags like Apple Wave, Wave, iOS 8. Now, to show you guys what basically happened is, obviously, there were people posting this on, social media. I mean, you seriously had, all these, websites, like this one forum going, boys, there is a hoax going on about Apple Wave. Fake advertisements claiming iPhones can be charged by putting them in the microwave have caught out unwary users. I will say, if you were dumb enough to fall for this, then honest to God, if you stuck your phone into an actual microwave and you saw this, for crying out loud, I do think at the end of all this, you might actually be dumb. You might actually deserve, what you got. I mean, I don't know if this is bait or complete stupidity, but I mean, I would want to imagine that some people genuinely tagged Apple, and there was one Apple intern sitting there wondering, when the hell did we send out the microwave charging memo, guys? I love this one. I hope to God this is actually real. LAPD communications. The Wave capability is a hoax. Don't be fooled into microwaving your hashtag iPhone 6, hashtag Apple, hashtag smartphones. This one user on this account goes like, iSheep can really be so gullible. I don't blame them. Dude, I love phone warfare, dude. Like, I honest to God love when like Apple users and Samsung and like Google and like Android users go at each other. Bro, phone should be simple, okay? You should just be browsing it for the internet, checking your emails, or watching videos. Simple as that, dude. Now, again, it's a pretty dangerous thing to put any electronic into a microwave, but compared to 4chan stuff, this is a pretty harmless venture that actually happened. So one of the next threads that I actually ended up remembering and I wanted to talk about was when they showed you how to make mustard gas crystals, ladies and gentlemen. So this is one infamous post. ITT, we make really cool crystals and post results. So this is really easy and you should have all the chemicals you need around the house. Now I want to start off by saying if you're ever taking DIY chemical like advice here and anything like this, don't do it. Okay? Do not do it. Do not just listen to what someone says on the internet and do the actual process, especially when it could involve seriously fucking wild chemical mixtures, okay? You'll need around 5 to 15 and a straw. Times are different, dude. We had a lot of pennies sitting around. Put these aside afterwards. Get a clear jar and scoop 2 tablespoons and 1 tablespoon of something into it. I might blur this out just so I'm not giving actual information to what's going on here. Now, the most important ingredient is blah, blah, blah. You might find it in most bathroom cleaning supplies and pour into a jar until it's about, something full. The last ingredient is blah, blah, blah. Fill the rest of the jar, but watch out for your clothes. Now drop these coins into the bottom and quickly grab the straw and start blowing bubbles into the coins. You should see what appears to be this crystal growth. And that's it. So apparently there's supposed to be this pinkish color that comes from, again, some chemical in here and the CO2 in your breath. Blowing until you feel dizzy isn't recommended, but it increases. So again, this, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty bad. And why is it pretty bad? Well, let me actually explain the science behind this. When you mix things like chlorine gas and whatever chloramine gas, what happens is if you smell or if you like inhale what the byproducts come out to be, you are basically causing severe respiratory damage to yourself, chemical burns, and the very, very real possibility of death, okay? So again, this is why I always say whenever you're reading things on the internet like this, don't actually attempt them. And again, this was like an example of like the shit you would find on places like B. People would post it, and again, it would lead to some pretty serious consequences. One of those serious consequences, and I don't know the reality of this, but 10 years ago on r/legal advice by one user, Lark42, ends up going, my son accidentally hurt themselves. Well, they lost their lives because of 4chan. So about 1 month ago, my 11-year-old son accidentally had died when he followed instructions he saw online on a website called 4chan. Someone had posted detailed instructions on how to make what he believed to be crystals, but turned out to be poison. Is there any legal action I can take against the person who ruined my life and devastated my family? Now, this is a really, really dark turn, and the thing about it is I don't, unfortunately, in their case, I don't really think that they really had a lot of legal options to chase, right? Because generally, anonymous users on platforms like image boards typically will hide behind identities, and usually tracing them is almost a near impossibility. If you're good with your, I guess you could say, OPSEC, you'll probably never be tracked down. And the thing about it is, obviously, I grieve for, this person as well, too, because obviously if you lose anybody in the process, even regardless of age, to something like this, especially somebody that's 11 who probably looked at something on 4chan and was like, this could probably be harmless. That post probably should have been taken down, but to give you an idea, this is how things kind of like escalated on this website. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, like, when you look at a lot of the people talking over here, it's always treated as like a joke here. It's like, I tried this and I died. I'm posting this from hell. If anyone is interested, hell is a permanent state of stale pasta. Now, that wasn't the only time people went onto 4chan with some crazy chemical concoctions and started to actually use them on their bodies, okay? One of the other things that I actually ended up seeing that like completely shocked me at the time too, was this one post. 37 decides where this is injected. No limits. Now, if you're looking at that, actual syringe, you can start to see that there's a real glowy substance inside of it. Now, immediately I'm wondering to myself, what could that glowy substance be? And immediately I think of those glow sticks, right? When you buy them from the store, you break them in half, and the chemicals inside them combine to create something that's luminescent. Take a syringe, you dip it out, and boom, that's what you have. So obviously the individuals asking him where they want to stick it in goes wrist eventually. That is, I believe, post number 37. So eventually the actual user here showcases a syringe going towards their hand and being put right in, showcasing that the luminescent material may actually be making their veins glow. So if you correlated this to the plasmids from like Bioshock, no one would be surprised, okay? It would be like the Eve hypo going in, but you don't get magical powers in reality land, okay? The possibility of dying may in fact be pretty hard. So in fact, a few of the actual people talking about this stuff had literally started to mention it's like the byproducts of glow sticks are known to cause potentially fatal heart problems if injected. Yes. Isn't that really dangerous? I mean, I would imagine injecting anything that you don't entirely trust into your veins to be a pretty stupid decision, right? But of course, I ended up looking up the glow sticks health risk assessment. And this is from June 2022, so like a quick understanding of it, just a quick primer, just a summary, is that glow sticks contain chemicals such as hydrogen peroxide, dyes, alkyl solvents, and phenyl oxalate esters. If you think that I can translate this into something, no, I'm an engineer, not a medic. Glow sticks are used seasonally during festivals, we know. Accidental or intentional incidents reported after exposure to liquid and glow sticks have generally resulted in asymptomatic and mild effects, or no reports of serious adverse events of incidents requiring hospital admission were found. There were no cases of severe systemic toxicity reported. Following exposure, mild irritation was reported at the exposure site. And again, what they're talking about are primarily people that I guess might be getting it on their skin. I don't think this ever accounted for people stupid enough to actually put it in a syringe and inject it into their bodies. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a stupid decision, and I would highly recommend against it. But yeah, it's just one of those things, par for the course, those creepy threads you would find on 4chan. Not really creepy, but you would find that to be just natural selection at play. Now, had anybody followed up on this and wonder what happened to the neon blue syringe guy? Nobody really had any idea. Like, nobody knew where it came out to. Somebody probably said he maybe became Dr. Manhattan. He's a famous superhero. The guy is killed. To be honest, I have no real idea where this person is, and I don't think anybody does know. But the reality is, if you're stupid enough to make decisions like that, if it's actually real, he's probably done something even stupider since uploading that post. Now, for a lot of people who go on to like 4chan, like they'll probably go to like B or like Poll or like they'll have a specific board. But for me personally, one of my favorite boards was obviously X, which is where I think my love for creepy internet mysteries and creepypastas and a lot of the stuff really did come out from, right? It was just like the part of the internet that is just a little bit detached from the mainstream where a lot of weird stories basically, came out from. And obviously you go to a platform like this and you'll come across things like, hey guys, here, you want to post some spooky stories that scared you? Things about the Paris catacombs, for instance? I mean, sometimes you'd find ghost videos like this, boys. The haunted shopping cart. Can someone explain this? Hold on, I gotta see this video. There's like a shopping cart just minding its, oh my God, it's turning around. Whoa, buddy. It's just going into traffic. You know, this is why I just don't park near actual, this is why I don't park near shopping carts. Like, goddamn, they do some crazy shit. I mean, that guy thankfully stopped it. Now, can we explain the paranormal effect there? I honestly wouldn't know. So I'm gonna let X in on a secret. There are societies all over the world that fight with angels, but I am angry about something. These societies have no idea that angels copying human psychology is the reason they attack us. There seems to be some leaps of logics in this that I'm not following. Talk to your doctor about something called schizophrenia. I always love how there's like checks and balances on the site too. Jesus Christ. Now inside that board, there were some really cool threads that I talked about in videos in the past too. Threads like Alex from Tennessee. For anybody that doesn't remember this thread in particular, one user comes by and posts, "Buy this rubble, your prize awaits, Tennessee, a slur. Park nearby and walk to this point in secret. It's under plastic at this moment. Good luck." And of course, in before dead body. I swear to God if it's a dragon dildo. I shall bump this many times. Now this thread became incredibly infamous when one user decided, you know what, actually, I'm gonna go to the coordinates that are listed. And those coordinates were listed in what appears to be East Tennessee. So this derelict ass yard that you're seeing was a place that one user decided to go. Now in a normal situation, you would look at that and say, no, I'm not. because that's where I'm going to get stabbed, okay? That's where some crackhead is going to encounter me and send me to the Shadow Realm. But of course, one user, Alex, decided, no, I'm going to claim that prize. So we were all just kind of laughing over here, wondering, okay, maybe nothing's going to come out from this, right? But of course, Alex decided to go to that location and allegedly post some of these images. And of course, it starts to get even wilder. So Alex goes, I'm at the location of creepy guy came early. So he starts posting all these images, dark as and then inside of door, found some plastic. Place is huge. Looks like food going bad plus cave. And of course, all of these images that Alex would post would effectively end with Alex not posting and just straight up disappearing from the internet. So some of these photos, obviously, if you're looking down the stairs to this hell, you probably are not going to go. I mean, I could just, I can just smell this and say no. But of course, Alex, being the non-scared 4chaner that he is, decides to go down and notice that, yes, there appears to be maybe some food stuff going bad. I mean, it might just look like a meth factory here, for crying out loud. I mean, you've got mason jars and water inside there. I mean, there is some serious cultivation going on here. Garbage bags, yada, yada, yada. I mean, these are not places you want to be in. Peeking inside seems to be a mummified pelvis and a folded paper plate. And in that paper plate, open prize, hide eyes. And that would lead to what appears to be an actual hard drive. And you might be like, well, what's in the hard drive? What's in there, Muda? Well, we don't know, because Alex went quiet. The watcher, whoever was watching the actual area from the actual safe area, disappeared. As far as the entire thread knows, Alex is killed. Someone claimed to be there, one cop car present, and headed towards warehouse. Now, there is actually nothing new that has come out from Alex from Tennessee. Now, to be honest with you, I could see this as like somebody creating this ultimate urban exploration troll, but I also could easily see this as somebody who actually did decide to go near some crazy psychopath and actually did end up reaping some rewards that you probably shouldn't be reaping. But you know what? If you were stupid enough to get caught into this, well, it is what it is. But of course, one of the things where it starts to build up here, ladies and gentlemen, was of course with another urban exploration thread, where one person goes in and says, 3 days ago, my last living grandparent, my mother's father, passed away at the age of 89. He was a WW2 vet. And my mom tells me that after returning home from the Navy, he was never quite the same. In fact, he was pretty paranoid about nearly everything. I was never really allowed to stay at his house. In 65, his wife suddenly died, with no explanation. My mom tells me that my grandfather became extremely fearful of a nuclear war with the commies, and that he decided to start digging a bomb shelter out of rock and limestone on his land. And I had never seen the bomb shelter until today. So this is the outside image of the bomb shelter. Unfortunately, it is tough for me to show you some of these images because we're just looking at Imgur archives, mostly because 4chan posts, for anybody that doesn't know, usually stay up for a little bit and then just disappear after a while. You really have to get lucky with archives to really know about these things. But of course, some of these images, some of these like actual, underground like bunkers that we're seeing over here look dark, derelict, about what anybody can expect. But what really was shocking in this entire situation was obviously some of the images actually had weird formations on the walls. So some of these like crosses and like divots would be put into the walls, but then you also started to have some of these faces as well too, staring at the person. So immediately people were looking at and wondering what the actual hell was going on. One user actually posted a Wikipedia entry for an article called The Ossuary, which is basically a description of a chest, building, well, or site made to serve as the final resting place of human skeletal remains. So whether that be the remains of the dead grandma, we actually don't really know. But when you got faces like this staring down at you, it's creepy. One image that got deleted was apparently this, and it appears to be the bone of a human being actually caught in the crossfire over here. And when that was deleted, apparently according to the people who were like looking at this thread, the actual OP never came back. And the thread was effectively 404'd a second after it was posted by the actual person cataloging this. So really weird stuff altogether. But now I started this video off by saying that obviously the range of posts on 4chan go from like harmless, goofy trolls on social media to something purely illegal. Now, with 4chan comes a lot of conspiracies as well too that I'm sure a lot of you know of. Something like the daycare saga, for instance, which I probably have talked about on like one deep web browsing episode, but to give a quick idea, this one little like place in Salt Lake City, the Funtime Kids Care, was actually something that became like Salt Lake City's biggest conspiracy because people looked at this building and were wondering, maybe it's not just a simple daycare. In fact, the original thread was saying, hey boys, I'm going to talk about this. This was actually posted on Salt Lake City's Reddit board, their subreddit. They posted a picture of a building they found creepy. Pic related, it's the building, because it was supposed to be an active daycare, but no one was ever seen coming or going. People dug into it, found a website, which was quickly ended up getting taken down, and the WHOIS information wiped. Then someone walked by during regular hours and found no one was there but an elderly-looking Mexican lady. People kept looking around online and found shipments of 4,000 kilograms of plastic jewelry being delivered from China to the following businesses in several states. So those businesses involved the Fun Times Kids Care, which would be this building up here, the Funcrest Bait Shop, Fun with Phonics, Funland Jumpers, and Fundamental Financial Group. So again, this actual like situation got the actual minds of r/conspiracy. And I believe that post was actually removed as according to this actual thread for the reasons of witch hunting, which would be, finding some random place and just basically putting an entire lightning rod of internet detectives to possibly, look into these people and maybe cause some harassment, right? So the actual explanations that came out here was it could be a front for a drug smuggling operation, which honestly, the more we read, maybe could be the most likely option. A CIA FBI safe house that Reddit just ruined. Why the CIA and the feds just wouldn't have a random house that didn't look like the shadiest daycare imaginable? Yeah, that is beyond me. Or it could be a front for an arms smuggling operation. And that was apparently because they found that something that they had imported from a bill of ladings had a similar weight to 7.62 ammunition. But of course, the final and most likely scenario was that it's just a bunch of made-up shit, misinformation, coincidences that people jump to conclusions over. So of course, when information starts getting removed, obviously the average person goes, Reddit nuked their threads, confirmed CIA black site. Now the thing is, no matter where this was discussed, what really led to a lot of people wondering the conspiracy could be real is even if you went to sites like Mixed Martial Arts where this was being discussed, entire threads were being taken down. Platforms like Above Top Secret actually ended up having this post being taken down. So when you got major conspiracy boards where you talk about the stuff being removed and constantly being taken down by moderators, it almost feels like maybe there is some level of collusion. Maybe somebody has gotten into something. And the thing is, at the end of all this, the more people looked into it, the more it eventually came out that, no, this was just actually a conspiracy theory. Actually, down the roads, a few years later, a couple of unannounced inspections actually did show up. And basically, with an unannounced inspection, it will happen to daycares, just because if you announce something, obviously, if it's a shady location, they can obviously prop things up a certain way. But if it's unannounced, you can just show up and basically tag things on your list and make sure everything is a-okay. Which, according to this checklist, and mind you, I'm not somebody in this field, seems to be that everything was a-okay. And of course, literally years ago, people from r/Salt Lake City decided to also go here and just post themselves in front of what now has become a national or a local institution at this point. So yeah, sometimes on 4chan you just come across some crazy goofy shit. But now where it gets illegal is this one thing. And I started off by saying that this is a range of threads, right? Where it gets illegal is this one post. So this was an actual archive from back in the day in 2014. Now, there's going to be some serious blurs, and I'm not even able to show you anything, but what it appears to be is a woman that is dead. Now, it turns out that the OP post, it's way harder to strangle someone to death than it looks like on the movies. So, of course, everyone on the internet's like, too soon, what an actress. Well, this was one post that actually was real. See, back in the day of reverse image searching, which I guess wasn't as easy or wasn't as effective as it is nowadays, people still actually looked closer at these images. And, usually when you're on a place like 4chan, people can find a hoax, just because everyone's seen every shock site. But it turns out the image was completely fresh. It wasn't a new image. It wasn't like an image from any other place that people could remember. It was fresh, brand new. And when somebody shows up dead on camera, that's going to spark some speculation. So the lady in the image, her unfortunate 13-year-old son, ended up actually discovering her body. Amber Copeland was the woman who was apparently captured in the actual image, and the individual that was arrested on this was somebody known as David Kallick. So unfortunately, the cause of death here was actually determined to be strangulation. The fact that the death occurred in the first place was terrible. But again, the disturbing part about it was obviously the fact that it was actually posted onto 4chan anonymously, underneath that exact thread. So at some point, it appeared that David wanted to actually, die at the hands of police officers, and this was like basically their end, okay? It was supposed to be this really f***ed up ending entirely. But after all this, 4chaners started to actually contact the authorities that they could. And on November 5th, he was actually arrested in Wilsonville, Oregon. And he was arrested because, thankfully in this situation, he did turn himself into this situation. So there was a lot of key pieces of evidences that did go up against him. For instance, he had photographs on his phone, time-stamped, on November 4th, okay? So literally proving that this guy would have had these images before really anybody else or any law enforcement agency. You had texts sent to his employer and, of course, even local friends as well, too, admitting that, yeah, he's going to be doing something that could actually have him arrested by law enforcement, or even worse, right? But anyways, I guess you could say the biggest piece of evidence here was just a confession note effectively provided saying that, yeah, he actually did, in fact, kill, this person. So later, in 2015, there was an actual trial that occurred. And, after even appeals had happened, he was sentenced effectively to 82 years in a state prison. And normally it, I think, would have been like 30 to 45 years based on the charges that were given. But there was actually one point in here that led to that 80 years in state prison. And of course, a lot of it does come from the fact that you can read this actual Court of Appeals right here. So this 4chaner, right, appeals their conviction for first-degree murder, theft of a vehicle, possession of stolen property. But the aggravating circumstances was here. The jury convicted him of all charges. First, the murder involved a destructive and foreseeable impact on persons other than the victim, obviously the one child that is now, motherless. And second, Kallick displayed an egregious lack of remorse. The jury also determined each of the 3 crimes were committed against a member of Kallick's household, making them also domestic violence convictions. So Kallick's standard range, based on the offender score of 8, was 370 to 493 months. The trial court imposed an exceptional sentence of 984 months on the murder conviction, with standard range of sentences on the remaining offenses to run concurrently. So the 2 aggravating circumstances were substantial and compelling reasons to impose an exceptional sentence. And also the court, when they looked at him, said that, of course, they had found that Kallick exhibited an egregious, unusual lack of remorse, okay? Evidence of defendants smiling, laughing, bragging, and joking about the murder demonstrated a lack of remorse. So not even just the 4chan stuff, like just because this guy was a seriously unhinged psychopath. And yeah, that person obviously was going to spend the rest of their lives in prison. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, as 4chan is down, I feel like today was probably the one time for me to really jump into like the really creepy sides of this website, because there are really creepy avenues to go in. Some of it starts off as like harmless, goofy fun, and it quickly escalates into wanton murder that ends up with somebody serving 80 plus years in prison. And of course, that's still just barely scratching the surface. So ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.